was a lady called Granny Green. Granny Green wrote cookery articles for one of Mrs. Brown's magazines. And it was her recipe for oldie-fashioned butter toffee that was really the cause of Paddington's downfall. If it hadn't appeared on the very day Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Bird were out shopping, Paddington might not have been quite so tempted to have a go himself. He tried adding some more ingredients for good measure. But for once, luck didn't seem to be on his side. When he went to stir it, he found the toffee had already set hard. Paddington gazed gloomily at the saucepan. All Granny Green's saucepans were as bright as a new pin. There was certainly no mention of any of them having spoons stuck inside them. Nor, for that matter, were her kitchen windows all steamed up. Paddington decided it was high time he cleaned them before they set hard, too. Toffee steam was very sticky. It was then that he had his second shock of the day. As he rubbed the glass clean, he caught sight of Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Bird outside. They appeared to be trying to say something, but he didn't stop to see what it was. Instead, he sat down and waited for the storm to break. "What on earth's been going on?" cried Mrs. Bird. "I've been trying my paw at toffee making," said Paddington sadly. "I thought it would be a surprise." "Toffee? It looks more like glue to me." "I've never seen such a mess," agreed Mrs. Bird. "I suggest a certain young bear had better get down on his paws and knees and scrub my kitchen floor." Mrs. Bird paused. While she'd been talking, a strange look had come over Paddington's face. "Is anything the matter?" she asked. "I'm not sure, Mrs. Bird," gasped Paddington. I've got a bit of a pain in my stomach, and I can't put my legs out straight. Ooh. You haven't been eating this stuff, have you?" "Well, I did test it once or twice, Mrs. Brown," groaned Paddington. "Wish I hadn't now." "Gracious me, no wonder you've got a pain. It's probably set in a hard lump inside. I'll call an ambulance." "An ambulance?" "Bears," said Mrs. Bird grimly, "have emergencies the same as anyone else. I shall dial 999. "Oh," groaned Paddington. "Couldn't you dial 111 instead, Mrs. Bird? It would be a lot quicker." Sir Mortimer Carraway opened the door of the hospital emergency ward and peered round the waiting room. "Are you that young bear's next of kin?" he asked. The Browns exchanged anxious glances. Somehow they had expected a much longer wait. "Well, he lives with us," said Mrs. Brown, "but he comes from darkest Peru." "Is he going to be all right?" asked Judy. "I think he'll pull through. Bad case of galloping toffee drips. Most unusual. On the stomach, too. Worst possible place." "Galloping toffee drips," repeated Mr. Brown. "I think I must have spilt some on my fur by mistake," explained Paddington. "I had my duffel coat open when I was stirring it. I expect it set hard when I sat down for a rest." "I'm afraid this will leave him with a bare patch for a week or two, but a strict diet of marmalade will soon make it grow again." "Perhaps I could glue it back on with some more toffee," said Paddington hopefully. "If you don't mind," said Sir Mortimer, "I shall keep it. I've never had a bear's emergency before, and I'd like to have this fur framed." "In that case," said Paddington, "perhaps I'd better start on my diet straight away, Sir Mortimer. Otherwise I might catch cold before it grows again, and then you'd have a